story from One News tonight. It's a very short story, but I think it's a pretty terrifying story about what this government is doing with ECE, early childhood education, and they're making it easier to have less or lower qualified people working with your toddlers, and they're going to pay them less, Chewy, as well. Let's have a listen.
Qualified early childhood relief teachers could be paid the minimum wage, with the government dropping the requirement they receive a higher rate. Some in the sector are welcoming the change, but others fear it'll lead to a drop in the quality of preschool education. Kate Nicholl-Williams explains.
Teachers for our littlest learners are in hot demand. Now the government hopes lowering the bill for relievers will...
So teachers are in hot demand. So what we'll do as a government is, rather than doing a drive on getting people to university and training more of them, we'll just make it so you can be less qualified to be one of them. That's their result.
Give centres more money to hire permanent staff.
Great to see that the government's trying to help us and get rid of some of this silliness that we have to operate with.
Most centres pay qualified relievers higher pay parity rates, from around $27.50 to $46.50 per hour. But come October, they won't have to anymore.
We're shocked that this has happened, because ECE relief teachers deserve to have pay parity with their colleagues who are working full-time.
At the same time, centres also won't have to try find a qualified teacher before hiring an unqualified reliever.
So I correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but my understanding right now, too, is you can have an unqualified teacher, but you need to go on a hunt for a qualified first, and then you can only fill the position if you can't find that. What they're saying is, from now on, don't worry about searching for the qualified teacher. You can go straight to the unqualified ones.
Sparking concern the reliever pool will shrink.
These experienced teachers who have gone relieving will just throw up their arms and say, right, I'm off to Australia.
She says centres might reduce their permanent staff level and hire more relievers to save money.
If we don't have a stable, highly qualified workforce, what kind of quality are we giving to these children, who are often in centres, for 8-10 hours a day?
I'd be very, very surprised that centres would do that deliberately just to save costs.
So the person you just saw there, we'll come back and talk about who she is. But she's basically saying, I'd be very, very surprised if early childhood education centres put profits over the children, as she is the spokesperson for the for-profit early childhood education sector. But she thinks it'd be very surprising if anyone in the early childhood education, and I shouldn't use the word profits, but I am, put profits ahead of the education of the children. We'll come back to more of that.
Deliberately just to save costs.
The Associate Education Minister says the changes won't affect the quality of education. In a statement, David Seymour says no centre can rely on relievers to take the place of permanent staff. He says the changes make it easier to support a centre's permanent workforce. Some calling for relief staff to be looked after, while stretched centres celebrate. Kate Nicholl-Williams, One News.
Okay, let's just have a bit of a look here, shall we? Let's go have a look at old mate. Right, Michelle Bosch. Now we are going to be careful with our language here, and we're not going to draw conclusions, but we are going to read out some truths that are online about who these people are and who they represent. So, Early Childhood Council President sounds like a child-centric group of people who are just wanting to educate our children. So, who indeed are they? That's them there. Early Childhood Council. Yep, same one. Is that right? Early Childhood Council. Yep, and she is indeed the president. I think we can go to the about, and we've got people, our people or something. There we go. There she is there, president, right there. So who are they? Who are the Early Childhood Council? Well, a Stuff article from a while ago says this. Government subsidies tied to providing 20 hours healthcare ECE for 3 to 5-year-olds were initially designed for not-for-profit providers, such as community-run centres and kindergartens. But lobbying from the Early Childhood Council and the for-profit sector meant a last-minute change by the Education Minister, Steve Mahari, to include them. Providers quickly found loopholes to charge parents for these anyways, such as requiring minimum enrollments above the funded hours and charging exorbitant prices for these. Since it was introduced in 2007, parent fees have risen by 50%. However, not-for-profit centres charged little or minimum fees. So making this clear, they're talking about this loophole is for the private for-profit providers, you know, the ones that are represented by the Early Childhood Council, right? Not-for-profit centres charge little or minimum fees, and over time, a shortage of government funding. It was frozen for 10 years and then increased minimally, but has not caught up with inflation, has made it difficult for them to survive. So the not-for-profits are struggling to survive in this article. And this article is, you can see it's extensive. Look how massive it is. But it's from 2023, and it's called The Juggernaut, How Childcare Became a For-Profit Business. And we know all about this. There you go. Best Smart got given $242 million in that particular year. So that's who they are. All right. Now, I also want to probably say, actually, we'll go back, because that was one of the people who spoke, Michelle Bosch, and she was pretty happy with the results. Should we listen back to what she said? Let's listen back to what she said.
Great to see that.
She was pretty happy with the decision by the government to be able to pay people less and have less qualified teachers in the classrooms. Let's have a listen to what she said again, just for clarity.
Staff. Great to see that the government's trying to help us and get rid of some of this silliness that we have to operate with.
So that's what she said. Now, there was the relief teachers were in there as well. We're going to leave them alone because they pretty much are what they are. The other people to speak were these people, the Office of Early Childhood Education, and they weren't that happy about this. Who are the Office of Early Childhood Education? Well, here they are. The ECE is the lead public advisor on early childhood education and care, representing the early childhood sector in New Zealand, Aotearoa. Our purpose is to support the provision and use of ECE alongside promoting safe and better quality ECE for children and their families and whānau. We place the interests of children and their parents, family and whānau in early childhood education at the centre of our work. Our work includes driving high quality ECE provision. And if you go and have a look at what they're about, values and positions, number one on their values and positional issues is Te Tiriti o Waitangi Indigenous rights of children, the group size ratios, qualified early childhood trained teachers is one of their values and positions, which is now being stripped away by this government for relievers. Children's right to attend high quality, involving parents, men in ECE teaching is one of their things. So they look like they're coming from a place that is really just focused on the children first, everything else second. And you'd have to say, I would think, Chewy, if you were the spokesperson for a for-profit series for early childhood education, then you have a fiduciary responsibility to return a profit to your investors. So the money comes first. Now, one more thing, and this is where we're not going to pass opinion, Chewy, but I will read out. So the lady in question, her name is Michelle Bosch. I won't put that up there. There's no reason to put that up there. But is involved. There. Michelle Bosch is the owner and manager of 1, 2, 3 early childhood education sectors. That's fine. You're allowed to be a business owner, not poo-pooing on you. But you're a business owner who is also a lobbyist and is happy that people are going to be able to be paid less in your business. Peekaboo is part of her group, and Lakeview Kindy. I'm going to go to the ERO reports for these two places. We're not going to pass opinion. I'm just going to read you a couple of comments from the ERO reports for these kindergartens. This is for Peekaboo Child Care Centre. And I'm just going to have a look at the improvement actions. Peekaboo Child Care Centre will include the following actions in its quality improvement planning. Build teacher capability and collective capacity to use internal evaluation for improvement. Increase the focus of making evidence-based changes to teaching practice and evaluating the effectiveness and impact of these changes on learning outcomes for children, and strengthen culturally responsive teaching practices to support the provision of a rich curriculum for all children. No commentary needed. This is just a one of her. The other one that she owns, I think with her husband as well, which is the Lakeview Private Kindergarten, their area of improvements from ERO to ensure the learning outcomes of Te Whairiki, the early childhood curriculum, are more visible in documented assessment, planning and evaluation of children's learning, and to build leaders and teachers' knowledge of how to do and use internal evaluation process to identify progress that relates to the services valued learning outcomes for children. Now, we're not passing comment on those, but I can say to you, Chewy, that from seeing a lot of ERO reports through my time, what these things typically seem to be saying your teachers need to be better at using the skills of being a teacher. One could draw the conclusion then that maybe the teachers that they're already using aren't the best qualified because they don't know the system of evaluations very well. And that's the person in that story representing the for-profit education sector who is pretty darn stoked that now finally we can pay relief teachers less and they don't have to be qualified. I'm finished my story now, Chewy. It's over to you.
Maybe that some of the she made reference to the silliness that she has to deal with. Maybe those ERO reports are one of the things that she finds silly.
Maybe.
Look, I've got a couple of close friends that are involved in the early childhood sector, not in the, I guess, for-profit things. But, you know, when they're talking about bringing in cheaper, less qualified relievers, I just want to bring out that these early childhood teachers are not fucking creaming it. They're not making the big bucks.
Yeah.
A lot of them have been fighting long and hard for pay parity with other teachers. And I think this is just another way to undercut it. It's getting cheaper, less qualified staff in the door, even as relievers. But then they can go, see, it's not the end of the world. Maybe we should just have less qualified, cheaper people there all the time.
Well, I think as well, and maybe we should go and play this bit of the story as well. I think what one of the concerns is that, you know, they would stop using as many full-time teachers and just start using relievers all the time and then paying them less. I'm pretty sure that was one of the situations. And then obviously, I think her name is Michelle Bosch, isn't it? Said, oh, no, that's not going to happen. Let's just have a listen to this bit. I haven't queued it up properly, but have a listen.
Experienced teachers who have gone relieving will just throw up their arms and say, right, I'm off to Australia.
She says centres might reduce their permanent staff level and hire more relievers to save money.
If we don't have a stable, highly qualified workforce, what kind of quality are we giving to these children, you know, who are often in centres, you know, for 8-10 hours a day?
I'd be very, very surprised that centres would do that deliberately just to save costs.
So one of the groups, the ones that aren't representing the for-profit, are saying what's going to happen. The concern is, now this is passed, there'll be fewer permanent full-time staff and there'll be more relievers. Then the spokesperson, the president of the lobby group for profit, ECE, says, no, I can't imagine people would do that.
I mean, even before you told me all of that stuff behind her background and who she represents and that it is literally a self-serving statement to the media with absolutely no context being given to the viewers, that comment of like, oh, I don't think that this industry would want to cut costs is just such a laughable comment. Like any business out there, if they can cut costs and fatten their profit margin, they're absolutely going to do it.
Yeah.
They're absolutely going to do it. And can I just join two things here? We've spoken a little bit about elderly people and spending all of their money on rest homes and extortionate rent, and now we're talking about people making money off our fucking children. That someone is clipping the tickets at both the start and the end of the life cycle now.
Yeah.
And it is because our society has changed so dramatically. People didn't need to put their kids into daycare for fucking hours and hours and hours because we didn't used to need two incomes to pay your mortgage and to buy groceries. It's just so grinding.
Yeah.
And then it just seems that our regulatory bodies, our lawmakers, various governments just can't seem to work out a way to unfuck this. Early childhood centres should just be part of the education system. That's the whole thing. To be an early childhood teacher, you should be qualified to be an early childhood teacher. You should have the appropriate qualifications. You should meet the appropriate standards, that sort of thing. We shouldn't be sort of going, well, some of these are fine and they're not really for profit. And then some of them are absolutely extortionate fucking robbers that have found a way to monetize farming children because mum and dad have to go to work.
And if they don't
broken.
if they don't have enough ECE teachers, then New Zealand government, pardon me, should mirror and mimic what Australia is doing and start looking for people offshore and giving them an incentive to come here whilst they're training up new Indigenous people, New Zealanders, to do more ECE teaching as well.
Yeah, it's so vitally important. Like, there's been so much conversation about the government, how our children aren't meeting educational markers and all, achievement markers and all of that sort of stuff. And are they starting looking at 5, or are they looking at the entire thing? Because it seems like we have very much 2 different types of early childhood centres with very different mindsets about what they're there to do.